Thanks for joining us for today's Elko Live here on KELK. It is Wednesday, and we're sitting down with our Elko County Commissioner, John Karr. John, thank you, because I know we haven't had a county update for a while. It is summertime, and people are busy, so appreciate your making some time.
Well, I didn't know you didn't have an update lately, but I'm happy to be here, and we don't have a meeting today, so exactly. I guess we'll wing it today on what's been going on.
Yeah, I figured we could catch up. Again, agenda items. I mean, the city's been in the same boat, right? You know, with summer, they'll go a couple of weeks and 2 or 3 weeks in between, and then won't have a lot, and then there'll be a bunch of things on the agenda, a lot of housekeeping generally, budget items. I know there is a budget committee meeting. I don't think you're on that subcommittee per se.
I am not on that one. And one thing about the county, it is wild that committee, the decision making, it's kind of wild. I'm used to the normal whole board making something like that. Obviously, we're aware, and I read the minutes, so I know what's going on, but that it's so shocking sometimes the decisions that are already made by that level. But
right.
It's not a big deal, but yes.
2 commissioners.
Correct.
That sit with
Demo and Rex.
Right.
And then with staff.
So it is important for people to realize that when those budget decisions, and you can, as an elected official, you do and can question some of those decisions when they get to the board level.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's not hidden or anything like that. It's just one of those differences of those kind of decisions were made at the school board level when I was on there. It was a whole board, whereas this one as a sub board handles it. But we obviously go over the overall budget, so it's not a big deal.
All right, John, thanks. And obviously something that, commissioners can reconsider this isn't the way it was always done, obviously. I think, if I recall correctly, please correct me if this is not, but I think that staff used to really take on the entire burden of the budget and then bring the budget to the county, and then the county would vote on it. This was kind of a way to get more involved, at least a couple of commissioners in.
I'm assuming so. It happened right before I got on, but that's how I remembered as well.
Right. So obviously, and the city, has a financial services director. That would be Lowell Black, and he does, the deep dive and then brings everything to the city. So interesting. That budget subcommittee, that'll be, if anybody is interested, it is a public meeting. I guess I could let people know about that. And that'll be this afternoon, is it today? The budget committee meeting is going to be...
It's not on my calendar. That's all I know.
Oh, 3 o'clock today.
So I'm not missing it. So that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, you are not missing it.
Anyway, no, part of the reason I'm not worried about it is, our staff on that is fantastic. I don't worry about our numbers being off or anything like that. And we do go over the whole budget. So it's not like I'm not misinformed. And
I think, John, that you do keep close tabs, as do the other commissioners, on some specifics within the departments that you oversee or that you're a liaison with. For example, the Fire Protection District in your case.
That one, I can't rave enough about the turnaround, not turnaround's maybe a little harsh, just overall growth of that department. A lot of it's just been because we did the infrastructure tax, which I think we had to, and I'm glad we did. But also... it was the infrastructure tax, that was the capital tax was before I was on there. But then there was the fire district tax and forming its own taxing entity. But then the NV Energy grants, that just combined is really, I'm very, very proud of our fire district now. They're not running around in the 1960s breaking down trucks that were just junk the day they came off the line to... they're actually up at the Summit Estates working on tree and shrub removal around power poles and all that. That's part of the NV Energy grant. And no, I'm not why they're up at the Summit Estates. That's part of their master plan going out in the community, because they've been out in Spring Creek, now through the Summit, and then out through the rest of the county. But no, very, very effective. I'm just very pleased with that whole department.
Thanks, John. Matt Peterson is the fire chief, and so you're right. I mean, he's been on this program too and talked about that. A lot of planning goes into this, and a lot of collaboration, as you just described too, whether it's NV Energy grants or working with Spring Creek Association to make sure property owners are creating defensible space and they understand the significance. So
No, absolutely. And once again, I feel confident that if we do have brush fires, we have the staff, the training, and the equipment to now attack it. Now, obviously, there's going to be some fires that get out of hand, and that's going to happen. That's where we live. But I feel much more confident about attacking it now than I ever would have years ago.
And also, that brings us to during a recent meeting, the County Commission did approve some funds, I think, for Spring Creek Association, right, John, for some road improvements and repairs. In fact, I think it's described as a community development grant to the association.
Yeah, obviously, we all weathered that winter and know how it handled our roads, the city, the county, the state, how much it's devastated anything. It was a hard surface that didn't have the water pool off it quite right. So no, helping out Spring Creek on that. But then that gets reimbursed back off of the diesel tax that we implemented that would be quasi going to them anyway. So I don't want to get into too much of the accounting details because it's kind of gets paid back based on that, but
Oh, so it's not actually an additional 500,000 then?
Correct.
Okay. So and it is described, it was in resolution form, just so listeners are aware. It was declared that in March there was an emergency in response to severe weather, and that created flooding. Spring Creek Association maintains about 140 miles of paved road, chip-sealed roads and roadways, and that's an unincorporated part of the county. And they get some road funding annually, but certainly wouldn't be enough to cover this emergency. So,
well, especially being unincorporated, Jackpot, for instance, being unincorporated, actually still gets a road tax that we give to them. Spring Creek's its own unique entity, being an HOA, but being that size and being almost like some of the states. My HOA, it's a gated community. They're not really public roads. People just don't accidentally drive through there. It's a place you drive to, and that's it. No, Spring Creek, that huge area, no, those are public roads you drive around to even get to locations. So it's a very unique situation with them, and that's why we help out with the roads in that case.
Yeah, and I think this really represents a much better relationship, I think, with Spring Creek and county commissioners. In the past, I'm not sure that there was the representation on the board, John, and so that's probably enabled these kinds of relationships and conversations and some funding.
I don't have a clue how much was representation on, like, for example, Rex and stuff bringing issues forward, or lack of leadership out in Spring Creek years past. I don't really know what the combination was, but where we're at now, no, that we have a very good working relationship.
Yeah, and steering resources toward amenities in Spring Creek, like the Horse Palace. That's a big renovation that's going on right now with ARPA money.
Correct. That will actually be a staging area if we have natural disasters or something else, is partially how that happened. But no, that's one of the things that we did to help out that community.
You know, that's a really good point because, in addition to others, but emergency planners have been on this program and talked about where you would take livestock or animals, in the case of, say, a large fire. And I think that Horse Palace area was designated as one of those places. So if it were obviously out of harm's way.
Right.
Talking with our Elko County Commissioner, John Karr, today.
But since we're talking about that, let's talk about dispatch.
Oh, please.
That is now under the county. I'm just seeing a lot of improvements on us being on one. The program that used to dispatch out to, whether it be City PD, Elko, or Sheriff's PD, Elko Fire, or Elko County Fire, were all unique programs. And so there was a lot of, not on the fault of the dispatcher, but miscommunication on how it would send to computer-wise to the different entities. That's all now on the same programming. That E911 tax has really made some improvements on the calls coming in, but that's something we're still working on, as some old Frontier lines, and a couple times 911's been down, that we're getting resolved as we speak. So no, I really think that's a big improvement.
And they're both in the same building, I believe, but we have, Elko Central Dispatch is what you're referring to.
Correct.
And then we do have still fire operations, which that's a separate network or separate?
That is, but it's normally just summer operations with the state, BLM, that kind of thing.
Okay.
It just happens to be up there. But no, Central Dispatch now, I really think you're going to see some improvement. Also just because it was such a weird, unique, 3 different boards running it, so the poor person up there leading was like, well, who's my boss? I mean, 3 different committees. Does anybody want to report to that? We almost sound like Office Space. So it was almost comedy. But anyway, I think we have a very good structure now underneath emergency manager, Lee Cabinet. So I really like where that's going.
And then this technology that we're able to purchase because we have the E911, that franchise tax that goes through the county now. So you have some funds to work with.
Correct. Obviously, most of us on the board, we're very anti-tax, don't really want big government, anything else. But I think in the past, some of that was a little too extreme, and there just wasn't enough money to keep up with infrastructure that we needed. Some of our programming was 30, 40 years old, and you're going, wonder why it doesn't work, really? So no, we're finally I'm pretty happy where we're at.
That's
And it's actually money spent well. I can honestly tell taxpayers, no, this wasn't wasted on some bridge to nowhere. This wasn't wasted on whatever weird trips you hear about the feds taking or anything. No, this was true, genuine services that I think the community really needed.
a user fee, if you will, that's being invested into emergency communications.
Correct.
So, talking with our commissioner about the E911, and there's a separate board on that. You've got lots of calls today.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you
that
for
would be
making-
for my rec board. Obviously, I got to sign some checks.
Okay, good. Well, and we can talk about that too, because our commissioner wears a lot of hats. He's a local business owner, in fact, within the city and the county. So that makes it, I think, extra important that, people understand that you see these issues from a lot of different viewpoints. John, you're not just a county commissioner. I know that I think you were on hand for, or at least participated in the legislative review recently. So you were able to hear about some of the impacts of legislation.
I didn't stay with that evening that was held at the chambers, but no, I've been talking to Bert every week that he even started on the assembly. So I'm pretty aware of what was going on, but especially involved in that. Of course, I don't remember off the top of my head the number for the Owyhee school.
I was going to ask about that, right.
And then that tax, how that's going to work for the school districts for capital.
That is on my list, so I guess it's a fine time to ask about that.
Well, there you go. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, exactly. So, the Nevada legislative session, in the waning hours, literally, they came up with this proposal. And I think at first it really sent county commissioners scrambling because it felt as though the county was being dictated to, and how could the governor approve something like this? But now I think the understanding is that the county will be the recipient, or at least will have about $65 million money going toward a new school, combined school for Owyhee on a reservation that we simply didn't have resources for.
So yeah, it's kind of interesting how it'll happen because of that redistricting. It's not Ira Wines. It's
Alexis is his wife, and it's
yes,
not Hanson.
Hanson, sorry.
I was going to say Wines. Yeah.
Sorry, Ira. Sorry, Ira was.
That's okay.
Up in that district when you were on school board. But anyway, Hanson, excuse me. Correct. Introduced some because you went up there and introduced yourself and got talking about a need up there, and introduced some legislation on how to fix that school because supposedly some petroleum products were dumped there years and years and years ago. We're talking, I don't know, probably 20 years ago, I guess. I'm not sure the date. It wasn't anything we know recently. But anyway, and then the school's just falling apart and hasn't had the capital resource. But anyway, so she went to introduce some legislation to try to repair that school or move that school to a different location. Instantly, her being a Republican, it was laughed at, kicked out of committee, not even looked at. But then out of the blue, it's kind of wild that one of the head Democrats all of a sudden picked it up on the last minute legislation and went, hey, let's build them a new school. And going forward, let's also have a capital infrastructure tax for the Elko County School District. But then that will mimic how we go through the rest of the state, that other counties will have that option. So it was kind of weird that Elko County was mandated to do something, but it also allows any other county in the state to do a similar, to basically go over the tax cap is what it is. So let's forget the Owyhee thing. I think we've covered that. State's doing that themselves, has nothing to do with Elko County, doesn't have anything to do with Elko County School District. They just receive the funds and has to go to that school to build that school that's on a different location. And then I believe the tribe up there itself is doing $10 million for the infrastructure, roads to it, and that kind of thing, and maybe the land donation to it or something. Anyway, that's part of the bill, but it really has nothing to do with anything else. The rest of the bill has to do with counties can implement anywhere from 1 cent to 25 cents above the tax cap for school infrastructure. Lyon County, Nye County, whoever.
White Pine's in bad shape.
Exactly. The only one that's mentioned has to, no matter what, was Elko County. So it was really kind of interesting on the wording, and that's where we as the commissioners come up, wait, what? We've got a whopping 1 day to think about what? So I guess we had 2 days finally. They extended 1 day so we could have a meeting and approve it. But anyway, so we'll be going over that discussion of what 1 cent to 25 cents, and do we really need to go over the tax cap, or can we take it out of the tax increment that the county already picked up and absorbed when pay-as-you-go went away?
So it doesn't sound at all as though the county is going to push back. The county has really, stepped back on this and said, yeah, this is an opportunity to build a school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So no, I there was obviously a lot of pushback at first, but it was more on confusion because it was like, wait, what? Because no, some of the wording was you will do this, and if you don't, then we're going to come back and take other assets from you. It was very harsh and very direct wording. But no, and I actually even talked to the guy that wrote it, and of course, off the top of my head, I don't remember his name.
Is it Will Adler?
There you go. Yes. Obviously, I'm very good at remembering names, if you couldn't tell.
Well,
but no, great guy. I actually have a great relationship to him, and I talk all the time now. So no, very well written, and that's why that was in there, and that's why we changed some of the wording. So no, Elko County doesn't have to do this, but this is what we can do, and no, we'll be discussing that in the very near future of adding that or however we do that tax and what it is. My gut would be it'd be 23 to 25 cents will go to the school district. That's kind of what my gut's feeling, and that's what I think will happen. But obviously, you'll see in the future when we're on an actual agenda.
Great. Well, we'll look forward to that. And we do have our monthly conversations with CJ Anderson, the superintendent. I know he was superintendent after you got off the school board, John. So, but he seems pretty grateful for the opportunity again to build a school. And he did mention that, with the state setting aside the $25 million, I think it's $50 million fund, but there'll be 25 that goes to tribal schools directly. And then, in the future, there'll be another 25 million that other rural schools, it's particular to rural schools, that they can draw from to replace their aging campuses too.
Correct. So it's not a guarantee. It's a pool grant, just like anything else. So if Elko County in 1 or 2, 3 years has 10 million in their it's not pay as you go, but we'll call it, or capital fund. Let's call it capital fund, and that can apply for it, and then get a matching 10 million or 25 million, up to 25 million or whatever, as a matching grant on a new school or a major upgrade or whatever the case may be. But no, the state has allocated, yes, 50 million a year, 25 to in tribal schools. I don't know what that totally means. I don't know if grammar school has a pretty good tribal population. So would that qualify, or does it truly have to be on a reservation land? I don't know. There's going to be some confusion on what exactly is going on with that. Another part of that bill is, because I'm on the CJ put together kind of a school improvement capital committee, I guess you could call it, and kind of just go over what the school's looking at, and they were trying to be more transparent on their capital needs. Well, one of the things that bill introduces, no, this tax will be under a committee, and it'll have a commissioner on it. It'll have a county financial person on it, a school financial person, and then a tribal person. And I'm not sure if there's a couple more, but I know it's at least those 5. So what authority that group and that committee has, I don't know that either. So myself being on this committee on the infrastructure, we're truly just more of a sounding board, an idea. But that committee, by state statute, I don't know what teeth it has. So it might even, if CJ and the school board says, hey, we want to build, I don't know, I know they want to build this meat cutting, meat processing kind of plant out in Spring Creek they've talked about. And I'm now just using this as an example. It wouldn't qualify under what I'm talking about because it's already on the books, but let's just use it as an example. If the school board says, yes, we want this, but then this 5-person committee says, no, you're not building that with this funds, I don't know who has the teeth to say yes or no. That's part of this bill. We'll have to decide, okay, who has the bigger gavel? I don't know.
And that's really interesting. I hadn't read that in that legislation. I'm really interested in these things because whether they're advisory committees or ad hoc, as you said, if they have some sort of authority, if they just make recommendations to elected officials, the reason I'm interested, it's always about transparency and accountability, and if some group is subject to open meeting law. So that'll be really fascinating to see, because you're right. I mean, part of the rub, as you well know, the reason that pay-as-you-go did not succeed, voters rejected renewing that, is because there was concern in the community about how the money was being spent, for schools and capital projects, and transparency. And so now we're kind of walking it back, right, to say that we're going to have even yet another advisory committee made up of maybe commissioners and school people to look at future school projects?
Correct. I think part of that rub was they have to go to the debt management committee every year. That's just mandatory. The city has to, the county has to, school has to. All of them have to go to this debt management committee. But one of the changes was the top priorities of the school district, and the concert hall, or whatever they're called, the performance arts, was always on the list, but very low on the list. And all of a sudden it jumped up